Good morning. Welcome once again to our morning devotions and daily meditations. Ngayon po ay August 4, 2022, araw po ng Huwebes. So, nandito pa rin po tayo sa Gospel of Luke, part number 2, which is the book of Acts. And we are on verse 5 to verse number 13. And we entitled our morning devotions today as Do Not Mock the Works of God. So we begin in verse number 5, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. At mayroong nananaan sa Jerusalem na mga Hudyo, mga relihiyosong lalaki na mula sa bawat bansa sa ilalim ng langit. So, alalahanin po natin yung background na nangyayari po dito after the celebration of the Feast of Passover, wherein the diaspora Jews all around the world would converge into the city of Jerusalem. So probably Jerusalem would be packed with 2 million Jews, whether proselyte or God-fearers and Jews alike would converge and celebrate the Feast of Passover. At alam po natin, si Jesus Christ ay naipako on the Feast of Passover. So remembering the story, so after 40 days, si Jesus Christ ascended into heaven. That is the Feast of the First Fruits. Because siya yung first fruits of the dead. Siya lamang po yung, si Kristo lamang po ang namatay, ang muling nabuhay, at hindi na po namatay muli. So yun po yung ibig sabihin po. So, after 10 days, so 50 days counting from the Passover, 50 days, we have the Feast of Shavuot, the what we call Pentecost. At ito po yung nangyayari po dito. So, yung mga umattend ng Feast of Passover ay nanatili pa rin sila 50 days. So, they were still there. They witnessed the crucifixion ng Panginoong Jesus. At ngayon, nandito po tayo sa Pentecost, the Feast of Shavuot. So, yung sinasabi po ditong devout men, Jerusalem of every nation under heaven. Hindi po, the writer is not talking about other Gentile nations. So, wala pong Gentile na attend ng feast ng Israel. So, tandaan po natin po yun. Mahalaga din po yun. Because some would equate that this is the birth of the church. So, kung ito nga po yung birth of the church, so, makikita natin yung sa Acts chapter 10 lamang ng conversion ni Cornelius, tsaka lamang nagkaroon ng Gentile, naging diversified na itong Jewish Jesus Christ movement. Ano po? So, remember tayo mga Gentiles, we were just grafted into the olive tree. So, verse number 6, Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. So, they witnessed the signs and wonders coming from heaven, this miraculous event that has happened. So, again, the writer is recapitulating the events in the giving of the tabernacle, and then in the giving of the law, wherein you see these signs and wonders happening, all these miraculous wonders. The same is true here. Ang ibig pong sabihin nun ay pinapatunayan lamang na sa lahat ng mga pangyayaring yon, sa tabernacle, sa pagbibigay ng law through Moses in Mount Sinai, itong mga miraculous event na nangyaring yon, ay kahalintulad din na nangyari po dito sa Acts chapter 2, kung saan ibinigay yung banal na Espiritu, the Spirit of God. So, that only proves, it authenticates na itong pangyayaring ito ay ang Diyos ang siyang may gawa. So, maraming mga, again, ito po yung nangyari hindi sa templo, but rather in the upper room, sa bahay siguro ng isa sa mga disipulo, o sa bahay ni Mary, or one of the Marys. Ano po? So, they question here what is happening because they heard them speak in his own language. So, the speaking in tongues is basically speaking in another language other than your own. So, if these were Galileans, as we see here in verse 7, and they were all amazed, and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? So, the integrity of the Galileans, ano po, it speaks about themselves. We know that the ruling elites are from Judah, Jerusalem, the southern part, while Galileans is in the northern part. So, tandaan po natin, literacy during that time is at its low. Ano po? So, mababa ang literacy rate. Nung panahon na ito, ang mga nakakabasa lamang po, nakakapagsulat ay yung mga ruling elites, mga scribes, probably mga Pharisees, and then Sadducees. But the ordinary, sabi nga, the people of the land is a derogatory term. And maybe they are talking about these Galileans because their reputation speaks about themselves. So Galileans, the Galilean region are the place where most of the insurrectionists and rebellious person would come out, as we would see that in history. So they marveled, they questioned those diaspora Jews that came, witnessing the miraculous signs and wonders, and yet these people are able to speak. These Galileans, who are probably low in its literacy, were able to speak in their own language. So they were all amazed. Those diaspora Jews that came to witness the Passover is now witnessing also this feast of Shavuot. They are celebrating the feast of Shavuot. So again, sabi nga natin dito sa speaking in tongues or speaking in language, the miracle happens in the hearing, not in the speaking. If the disciples were Galileans, so they are speaking probably not Aramaic, probably Aramaic language. And yet, in the hearing of those diaspora Jews from all over the world present there, as we would see here recorded down the verse, they heard them in their own language. So the miracle is not in the speaking, but rather in the hearing. And how hear we every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born? Parthians. So these are the diaspora Jews from whence they came, Parthians and Medes, Elamites, dwellers in Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, and Egypt, and in the parts of Libya about Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews, and proselytes. So there were also diaspora Jews that came from Rome. So we know that there is a movement there also in Rome, a Jewish Jesus Christ movement. Doon sa Rome, that's why the Apostle Paul wrote an epistle there, because there are diaspora Jews present, and they were converted upon the preaching of Peter here. So they were the ones who started the movement there in Rome. Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our own language the wonderful works of God. So just as Eldad and Medad, after the Spirit of God came upon them, they were able to speak the wonderful works of God in the camp. And the wish of Moses says to Joshua, he said to Joshua, a wish that all Israel would be filled with the Spirit of God. And this is the fulfillment of that. Ano po? So, verse 12, when they were all amazed and were in doubt, saying one to another, what meaneth this? Again, sa bawat miraculous hand of God working in the midst of the people, there would always be those nayers, or those that would be negative about what is happening here. So that is what we mean by the blasphemy of the Spirit of God. Every works, every miraculous works, every wonders coming from heaven through the workings of God, through His people, in the church, or in the individual believer. We should not doubt. We should not mock. So as we entitled our morning devotion is that do not mock the works of God. When we mock the works of God, then we blaspheme the Spirit of God. Others mocking said, these men are full of wine. So we end there. Do not mock the works of God. So Ang ating morning devotions, paalala sa bawat isa sa atin, sa mga manonood, sa mga kapatid na nakikinig nito, ay huwag po natin pagdudahan ang mga miraculous things na ginagawa ng Diyos sa church, especially when a pastor, when a ministry has been blessed by God. So instead of envying or being jealous or being jealous, magseselos, nainggit, envious, jealousy, but rather we should praise God for all the things that He has done through His church, through His man, and through His people. We will rejoice with them. We would not mock the works of God. So, tandaan po natin, lahat ng mga signs and wonders, they were able to do those things that are in our present time. Contextually, through the coming of the Spirit of God, they were able to do those things. In our times, we are able to do great and marvelous things, speaking the wonderful works of God, because we have the Spirit of God in us. Though people around us would mock us, hindi po ba? Lagi natin naririnig, pa-Bible ka pa, masama naman ugali mo, pa-Baptist ka pa, pa-Christian ka pa, masama naman ugali mo. So, they will mock us, they will try to belittle the things that we are doing, ngunit sabi nga, magpatuloy lamang po tayo. Dahil ang alam po natin, ang pinaglilingkuran natin ay ang buhay ng Diyos. Do not mock the works of God. And if we see others fulfilling the works of God, doing wonders and miraculous things that are beyond our perception and conception, we rejoice with them. Hindi po ba? Instead of grudging them down, yan ang ugali ng mga Pilipino, hindi po ba? Yung the crab mentality, when we see people going up, we try to pull them down. So hindi po. When we see the works of God in this church, in this ministry, in this person, in this pastor, we rejoice with them, instead of being envious and jealous, but rather we praise God, because we do not mock the works of God. As we see in this text for us this morning in Acts chapter 2 verse 5 to 13, the people witnessing the miraculous works of God as if in the days of the tabernacle and in the giving of the law in Mount Sinai, and yet they witnessed the recapitulation of it in here in Acts chapter 2, fulfilling the prophecy of the Joel. It should have reminded them, they should have remembered those things, those words, and yet they mocked the works of God because of the hardness of their heart. Let us not harden our hearts, but rather be thankful for the things that God is doing in our lives or even in the lives of fellow believers. Muli, marami pong salamat at nawa wag po natin kutsain ang gawain ng Panginoon. Kung yun ay nakita natin, gawain ng Panginoon, ang kamay ng Diyos ay naroroon, lest we go against the Spirit and we blaspheme the Spirit of God. Marami pong salamat at pagpalain tayo ng Diyos sa buong maghapon na ito.